Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff. Happy Anzac Day to all our Australian and new listeners in New Zealand as well. Joining me are Tim Kalinowski and Nick Martin as we get into the upcoming five-game slate in the Stanley Cup playoffs over these next two nights. We've got three games on Wednesday that we'll dive into, two games on Thursday, and then we will reconvene on Thursday night to go over the Friday, Saturday as much as we can do on Sunday as well. And then we'll get you set up Sunday night for the Monday, etc. So you'll be hearing a lot from us, which is either a good or a bad thing, depending on how you've been doing these past few nights. But the game we'll start with, I think, is the most interesting. The betting market says so as well. It's the tightest game on the board for these next two nights. It's Bruins and Leafs. Essentially, pick them. Bruins minus 105 on the road. Toronto minus 115 coming home. Total of 5.5. Does sound like William Nylander is trending towards playing in this one. Nick, so what are you looking at here in this coin flip?
Yeah, I didn't really have a lot here. I know that's kind of lame, but I actually think my favorite play that I'm going to sprinkle on after going starting the playoffs one for one on these tonight was I think it's a good spot to go for overtime. I actually think this is going to be a pretty closely contested game. I think we're going to be getting out of the period of people just trying to set the tone and taking, runs and trying to drag people into it and all that good stuff. And I think we'll probably see something close to last game. I really think at this point these teams really are just evenly matched. I feel like they've both felt their way into the playoffs. The Leafs figured it out a little bit defensively. Samsonov was a little sharper, but I don't see them really ever running away from the Bruins with what the Bruins' strengths are. So I feel fairly confident this is going to kind of feature close score lines throughout. I think plus 340 is a pretty good number to sprinkle on the tie. And then other than that, I didn't really have too much. It feels like a bit of a we'll see a pushback from Boston. We'll see some adjustments. I thought that Toronto deserved that win for sure in game two and deserved a loss in game one. And at this point, just don't really have a firm take towards what we're going to see, other than probably both teams bring a pretty reasonable effort. So yeah, I just like that overtime bet on this one.
Yeah, obviously don't mind that, Nick. Overtime, always a good look in these playoffs. But to me, the Leafs have, gotten a lot of flowers over the last, I guess, 24 hours or so since that game ended, and they deserve so. Austin Matthews was great in that game. I know their stars have been a big talking point, obvious to say the least, for the last couple of years in the playoffs. But to me, what really sunk the Bruins in this game was Peak getting hurt and having to just play more Shattenkirk, especially on the PK. You start this game, regardless of who it is, six healthy defensemen for the Bruins. I think that's value add in and of itself. The goaltending thing, I think Allmark was just fine, and they're likely to go back to Swayman, which I think another check in the Bruins' favor. And then also too, we've talked all year about the Leafs home ice advantage and how it tends to be a bit overrated in terms of when you're ranking NHL teams' home ice advantage. I think it could be, for anything with this Leafs team coming home 1-1, could be a bit of them being a bit tight in this situation. And so the Bruins are the dog here, and I'm just going to lean with the dog in this situation, which how close this series has been. And then you add those factors. I have no problem with if you're getting the Bruins as an underdog. I have no problem playing that.
Yeah, I definitely respect that part of it. I wrote before game one about how in the Keefe era, the Leafs have been significantly better on the road. They'll be 9-6 with the 1-1 split there. They're 5-12 on home ice. So that is a real factor. I said that, you wouldn't probably, like, if you're going to bet them, first two games, probably picking your chance was probably the time that made sense. And by them there, I mean the Leafs, because you're getting way better price when it feels like it doesn't matter. And now that point's been proven because they're minus 115 here after being, what did they close? Plus 120 last game.
Yep.
So yeah, you are paying that tax. So I can definitely respect that. I also, the series 2-2 after four games, I'm hoping a lot of listeners tailed that, because that's obviously now going to be a pretty fun sweat with it being alive for whoever loses in game, or whoever loses game three. We just got to root for them the next night. So hopefully that gets in. And then the other thing that I wanted to put out there that I mentioned today on Green Dot was I'm not necessarily saying it's the best bet, but obviously, the Leafs have so many fans and they're so talked about, and they're going to be followed no matter what. I was surprised Matthews was 30-1 to win the Conn Smythe today. And it feels so hard for me to ever see. And I don't really love the Leafs' chances. I think they're pretty flawed. But if you do like their chances, I think that's one of the safer ones that we didn't really touch on. Um, it feels so hard for it not to be him. Nylander's not even playing. Marner's been trash. I think he's gonna, pick it up some, but he's obviously dug a big hole. And you look at the way Matthews is going, it's got to be him, I think. And then it feels like it's not really going to be Samsonov ever. Riley's the only D who'd ever be in the mix, and he's looked pretty quiet so far. So to me, it just feels like it's Matthews. So if you like the Leafs, if you think maybe it's the year, I would encourage you to just go with the Matthews route.
And I was the one rational one, Leboff, last episode when I said Leaf series. I was the one rational one.
Yeah. Can't believe you're not giving Revo a chance here. They bring the guy
Domi.
in. Yeah, Domi. Yeah, I would lean towards the Bruins, I think. I don't know if it comes down to the goaltending still to me. Like, and Ullmark was good. There are people who are still complaining about Montgomery going back to Ullmark, and I was like, I mean, he played as good as any goalie you could expect in that situation. So I thought, the switch, worked as well as it could have. It keeps them in the rhythm. But I think the goaltending disparity is still there. The Leafs D core is still a mess, and I just trust these Bruins to make some adjustments. And so I'm thinking about once again attacking the Bruins puck line because I just have such a tough. I know you said you're thinking it's going to be a pretty tightly contested game, Nick. If the Bruins win, I still think it's a game where the Leafs capitulate and make the mistakes, or the goaltending is not there. It just feels like that script is going to play out all series where, excuse me.
The Islanders stole Mike's voice.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about the Islanders.
Hey,
but,
Parise goal. I told you
oh my
Parise
God.
point.
Beauvillier and Parise,
Attaboy,
all the former Islanders coming up tonight. But yeah, I think that script will play out. So I think like the Leafs will be it's so weird that these two teams have kind of switched profiles for this specific matchup, where the Leafs will be the team to win the edgy games, and the Bruins will be the ones that benefit in kind of the more chaotic situations. So yeah, I think Bruins puck line is where I'll go. Knights and Stars up next. Right before that game started, I was like, I got to play Mark Stone to score this first goal, and in true Leboff fashion, I had to parlay him with someone else, and it was Zach Hyman. And because of the Islanders game going the way it did, I didn't realize I'd won that bet for hours after. So till I texted you guys, I was like, oh God, I wonder if Zach Hyman scored first too. Anyways, I like the Knights here. They're plus 138. Stars are minus 166. The total's minus 155. I realized the Stars were really fine in that game, but that game
Hey, Leboff, wait, that was the saddest parlay win of all time. That was just the saddest parlay. No celebration. You just sent that to our group, and I was like, and we were all saying sorry as you had won a first goal parlay.
A classic 187-1 winner.
Sorry to cut you off.
Would have gladly burned to see the Islanders not throw up all over themselves. Anyways, yeah, I like the Knights here at plus 138. I know Dallas was fine, and it was like just a weird game with a lot of goaltending, and the Knights obviously score early. The things just kind of get all jilted, but I still think this number, it looks a little lofty to be out there on a team like Vegas. So it's moved up from game one. I don't know if Vegas's play has earned them any like more market respect, but they're still really good. So with the question marks about the goaltending for the Stars and the fact that we still don't really know just how good this Knights team could be, I think you err on the side of caution. I think that the Knights would be my favorite bet of these two games here at plus 138. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it looks a little wide, but I'm not going to pull the trigger because I do have some confidence that the Stars are going to get right, and I want to cheer them on. So I don't think you can play the Stars. I think you're definitely paying a bit of a can't lose number if you take minus 170. What I would prefer if you like the Stars is, like, at this point, it feels like Vegas might really just be a full-blown top 5 team again. I know they didn't prove to be exactly that in game one, but it feels like the roster moves are going to work out, and that Stone is back. And at this point, they're probably just, everything we kind of like. They were the toughest team to evaluate all year, I think, because you were trying to guess how much better they would be when they finally had their whole lineup. It's not like they're amazing in game one, but I feel like at this point, if they get through this series, you have to view them as a full-blown cup favorite. So, like, if you like the Stars this much, I kind of prefer just taking them at plus 1,200 to, like, they're still out there at 12 to 1, 13 to 1 tonight to win the cup. If you didn't get in, that's now the price that I was excited to have locked in, like around the All-Star break, and now you can just grab it. So if you like the Stars, if you think they're worthy of a bet at this long of a number, and if they're really this much better than the Knights at this point, I think you just go ahead and do the cup outright. I feel like this is just a battle of the heavyweights. So if they get through it, you have to like their chances. I know they'd still have a really tough matchup next round, but yeah, I didn't have a ton here other than the over. I like the over. I think at 5.5 minus 130, it's worthy of a play. Hopefully it doesn't rise too much overnight. I just think that right now both goaltenders look shaky. I wouldn't be stunned if they gave Aiden Hill a chance. We'll see. Thompson obviously wasn't great with that one really soft goal making it a game. And then at the other end of the ice, Ettinger's been kind of shaky. And I think both teams, obviously, they know how to lock it down, but I think they're kind of going to trend towards being like middle of the pack teams. We talked about before game one how Vegas, when they won the cup last year, wasn't just winning games 2-1 every night. They were doing well to generate offense as well. So I think 5.5 looks a little low. I feel shaky about both goaltenders. I think both teams have a lot of offensive punch. So I think that's worth a play.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty convinced on Dallas game one. I thought that price was short when it first came out, and then it got longer, and obviously I felt better about it because of that. But the way Vegas played, and I think a lot of maybe some of the underlying numbers will say that Dallas played better than they did. And I think a lot of that had to do with them chasing the game a bit because, Vegas just turned it into that kind of trap, real tight defensive, shut it down, 5 guys at home plate in front of the net type of game. And I was I said I had to see it to believe it on Vegas, and God, are they back? Like this number to me is like, if I wasn't kind of invested take wise in Dallas and betting Dallas for the series, I would think this price is a little ridiculous on this game with the way these two teams just played. Does not seem like the gap in my opinion. So if I didn't have what I had invested in Dallas, I would definitely be playing Vegas again here, just on a sure numbers play. And then on the Dallas side of things, I thought Stankoven was a force in the game, and Hintz was pretty quiet. So I'm looking at right now Hintz over half point minus 125. I wouldn't mind that at all. Dallas's route is this guy to be playing well. Those two things are correlated, and as a favorite, I think Hintz is going to get on the board in some fashion here. So I think my best bet on this game is Hintz to have a point.
Okay.
Excuse me. Sorry, Leboff, and the over. I'm on the over as well.
And the over. Let's move on to Kings and Oilers up next. The Oilers with a 7-4 win in which there was a hat trick by Zach Hyman, and that was secondary to a 5-assist night from Connor McDavid. Hey, and Adam Henrique, man. Look out. He's just saving it for the playoffs, Nick. He was just saving it for the playoffs. The Kings are plus 150 here. Oilers minus 182, total 6. I have a hard time just not going right back to the Kings. Like them in game one, and price is going to probably be right in that same range that we liked them in originally before it moved. As scary as game one was, like that game was off the Kings' terms right away. Like, and if they can they could keep it a little bit tidier, a little neater. They should have a chance here to neutralize the Oilers a little bit more. The goaltending is going to be an absolute. There's almost no point in trying to project the goaltending battle in this game, in the series, I don't think. So I'll just go ahead and say it's a wash. And I don't know. I think with the Kings' defensive acumen, they should be a little bit sharper from the get-go in game two. And I don't think that there's any value on the Oilers at this number. So I would go right back to the Kings here, Nick.
Yeah, I definitely don't really see value with the Oilers, even though that was I mean, I've lost my nerve to either side. I think that they should be able to clean up some of those plays. Hopefully the power play will be a little less dominant. And I mean, none of the goals probably out of any of them Talbot should have saved, right? They're all just like backdoor
Right.
tap-ins where they just didn't pick up the guy at all. I don't know. I didn't. It looks a little long, and I still lean towards the Kings being able to get right, but I'm definitely questioning my thought that this is going to be a series. It felt like the Oilers' top guns just all had their way. Um, so we'll see. My bet, I'm just gonna go right back to Adrian Kempe. He's still minus 140 for 3 shots. I think that's worth the play. He had 5 and a goal in game 1. We talked about before that game how I felt like that was underselling what he's done this season, what he's done in his playoffs versus the Oilers specifically. Like he's averaging 5 shots versus them for 3 straight playoff seasons now, and it feels like he scores every night against them. So I would just feel like that's again not enough of an over adjustment. I think they got to keep riding that top line more and more. And we talked about in that last one that I didn't really think it was going to be that low event, and that I didn't think it was that likely the Oilers were going to hold them to like 20 shots, 22 shots, which was kind of the only argument I could see why, like you're talking about Kempe only being minus 130 last game and minus 140 this game, is if you really think it's going to be like a really low event thing where the Kings are only getting 20 shots. So I think that that's a pretty good look. I feel like they are going to get their chances again. I don't know where, I don't think we'll see 7-4 and 82 shots combined, but I think we'll see a high event enough game that price is just, you just play it and see how it goes. Cause it feels like Kempe always gets going in these games, and I love the way that line plays together. So I think we just got to ride him.
Yeah, I mean, this series, I wanted to feel better about LA. I took them preseason to win the cup, so I kind of had that invested in them. But honestly, the way that game played out, I don't leave off. God bless you. I don't see how you could go to LA again. It was just like it felt like when you're playing street hockey or beer league, and you're like, I promise this goalie's really good, and he's just like still getting lit up, and it's just happened to be like Edmonton. It was all just backdoor tap-ins and point blank shots. It was a full on assault from the Oilers, and it was fun to watch when they get the ice tilted like that. I took the over in game 1, and I think I'm going to take the over again here. I still like Skinner, and it was still 4 goals, right? Like I'm fine with Skinner, but it's the goaltending matchup is, and I know it wasn't totally Talbot's fault, but it's just too leaky for me. And for what it's worth, as the time of recording this, West overs are undefeated. So take that with what you will.
What a stat. That's like, I was thinking about how the away trends we gave out, and people are probably, well, these guys are idiots. But the point and the next step is that you have to realize that, when there's, first off, when the higher seeds have played their home teams or their home games, it's obviously way more likely that the home record's done a lot better, just because, you've got New York demolishing the Caps, which would probably just be happening wherever they're playing. And that kind of skews the data a bit too. So I'm still not like sure. My take is always just that in general, it doesn't mean much one way or another. Which is looking a little more like it tonight, I guess, with the Preds up 2 and the Avs up 2. But yeah, same kind of thing, Tim. I'm sure some people were like, wow, that's an absolute clown take when the first 2 nights were like 8-0 or whatever it was.
Hey, I think you got a filter for like minus 170 favorite and above. At home.
Exactly.
Like,
That's what it is. Like, use your
Yep.
brain.
I can't
It's,
tell you
I'm
how many
just
times I
saying,
got asked about that over the past few days. Like, oh, is this just a new thing? I'm like, no, it's just these are really big favorites winning games. When we get to rounds 2 and 3 and the lines are tighter, we'll start to see. Okay. Bolts and Cats up next. Panthers win in overtime for game 2 to go up 2-0. 3 out of the 4 East series are 2-0. So Thursday night, 2 must-win spots for the Bolts and then the Islanders. Tampa is minus 125-ish right now. Florida plus 105, total 5.5. It looks like Sam Bennett will miss this game and perhaps beyond. That didn't look good for old Sam there. Took a puck off the hand. Aside from that, I think the Panthers have continued just to be just a sharper team at 5-on-5 overall, and the depth of the Lightning's decor is being tested, especially with Perbix out, and you got Calvin DeHaan and Crozier make it his playoff debut. Lilleberg, I think is just fine, but like, yeah, this isn't this isn't the Tampa decor of old. So I would play Florida at plus money. I don't know if it's going to close there. Uh, I would assume that they'd be the side to take money even with the Bennett injury, and I think a lot of people will look to perhaps it doesn't get there because people are looking to back Tampa in the quintessential they're going to get a game spot. But if you're going to give me plus money on the Panthers team that's really shown much better, I think I'll take it here, Nick.
Yeah, I didn't really have much here. I mean that's a tough 2 games for the Lightning. I thought that the Panthers deserve to win both games would be my take. I feel like that'd be a little hard to contend, but it also at the same time probably feels pretty bad to lose both those games
Yeah.
when you did kind of hang around and play right. But
Yeah, it's like a classic. If the Panthers didn't bring like close to their A game in both of them, the Lightning easily get out of there with a split.
and that
So
Bob save on Duclair in the final
yeah,
minute
that's true.
was
Yeah,
massive, huge for the tie hit, and I was um I mean, the Lightning have had a pretty legitimate home ice advantage this year too, but I didn't really have a lot here. I feel like the price looked pretty fair. I'm just hoping we cash this Panthers spread and get on with it. But also, it wouldn't be horrible to see a series because it looks like the only decent one in the East could be the Leafs Bruins potentially if this one doesn't get going. So, I mean, yeah, I really didn't have a ton on this game. I feel like you kind of got to lean with the Panthers. We've talked about that one Knights Kings series a lot, Mike, because it was
yeah.
like
That
the
was the
market just
Knights.
could not
Yeah,
adjust that the Knights were outplaying the Kings, and it was like game 3 they were still a
yeah,
dog, game 4 they're still a dog, and it was like how is this happening? I don't know if I feel like this is quite at that point, but I feel like it's close to it. That it's like at this point it's a maybe a bit of a reach to say that the Panthers should ever be an underdog in this game.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And it's basically, as we record on Tuesday night, it was you play on that number that came out, the plus money Florida number. And if you don't get that, you know, I you should be totally fine just passing. There's plenty of other playoff games to bet on. I'm kicking myself over having the over in the first 2 games of the series. Expected goals were supposed to hit the over in both those games, and all you need to know is those games were 5.5, and now the openers here, or at least where it sits right now, are 6s across the board. So, Leboff, can we get money for that? Does that count? That you're technically ahead of the curve. I'm done. No more chasing the over in this series. Congrats, Vegas. You beat me. Tip of the cap. You're my daddy.
This will
yeah,
be the one that hits. Then you
yeah.
just feel like you
Absolutely.
can't
Eight,
try it
eight,
again, Timmy.
100%.
Just know that was huge for myself to get the tie. So hopefully that helped your suffering, Tim.
No, listen, the problem was I want to bet tie as well. And I was waiting to shop it around. And I wanted to see the anthem in the Colorado Winnipeg game. And ESPN wouldn't have it on. So I'm flicking through trying to find the anthem. And then I forgot to bet tie before you knew it. So blame that.
So it's Canada's fault.
100%.
All right. Should we? Let's just wrap it.
No, there's no other game.
Yeah, there's no other game Thursday night. Canes minus 162, Isles plus 134, total that's 5.5. Unfortunately, I'm going to this game. I mean, couldn't want to go less, but here we go. One last trip to UBS Arena, for the biggest loser on the island. Yeah, I got nothing here. I think that this looks fine, and I think a lot of people will just be absolutely hammering the Canes, thinking that the Islanders, like, who in their right mind could respond to that game? I don't know. I can't. So, Tim, that looks like where you're going.
Yeah, who in their right mind can respond? You're probably thinking Patty Waugh, but he ain't suiting up, Leavoff.
No.
He ain't walking through that door. I like the Canes to 165, minus 165. I don't know how you respond from that. Even when you look at the remarkable comeback, the Canes, what were the final shots? It was like 45-12, whatever the hell it ended up being. The Canes, I don't want to call it luck, Mike, because the Islanders have played well for stretches, but they've been opportunistic, let's say, to get their goals and get leads. But Carolina's just the better team, and I don't know quite how you respond to this one. I'm going to take Carolina here at the. I got it at the -160 opening number. It's good. Good luck responding to that. I'm sorry, man.
I'm thinking I'm going to wait and see how it goes. I think the Canes come out shaky 2 games in a row. I don't know if you can just count on that as a rule every time, but this feels like one where you might be able to wait and get your opportunity to pick what you want to bet on the game. I think I feel like it's one where maybe you might be able to get a read on if the Islanders are going to come out well and with a response, or if the Canes are just going to be sharp and be able to carry out the way they played the final 2 periods of that last game, where it was almost like the Islanders weren't on the ice at all. And I think you'll maybe be able to see that. So I want to make a bit of a read on that. I kind of suggested people do that in the Caps game tonight, and I think you could maybe see that that was kind of the way it was going to go. Although I guess I said that if you're going to do that, to do the spread, so it's not like it was great advice, but I do think that it might be the same kind of thing where you can maybe kind of get a read on what the Islanders are going to do. And then if not, if the Islanders get a 2-goal lead and then you just see Carolina pressing, you probably don't hate your chances of getting some
That's
decent
the
action on
formula.
them.
That is the formula right there.
Yeah, it's
the
just
Islanders go up. They
can't figure it out. And I know at
this
some
isn't
point,
new either, Nick. This
no,
isn't
that's
new.
the
That's the
thing. And
thing.
I think it's natural when you have lesser talent, you don't have guys who want to make plays on the puck, that every team goes into shell at times, but it's just a whole different level from the Islanders. And also Carolina does this to teams too. We've kind of seen it year after year. So I think it's just like a combination of factors. But that last game was crazy. Like that was
It was torture. It was just
Mike,
absolute torture. My house was filled with smoke.
Go ahead goal is so ridiculous, dude. Just slams him on the wall and then just tucks it in real quick. And I was just
I told
Yeah.
Leboff I started doing dishes because I was like, let's get ready for overtime here. I got to settle in. This could be a long night. And but listen, it also on the other side, from just talking about the game standpoint, not Leboff entirely, as much as we feel bad for him, that is kind of how Carolina wants to play in terms of like, it's like a boxing match and they go win and like, they get a knockdown in like the 10th round. They just wear you down. Like this is still like, that's why I'm leaning more towards Carolina. It's like, it's less panic for, oh, they were down. It's like, this is kind of like, they'll wait for 5 minutes left in the game for it to show the way that they play. And that's can be too much for teams, especially a team like New York.
Yeah, and we should note too, the Canes will, like, I think the status of Pesci is fairly relevant. He's pretty good for them. He hasn't been as good this year, but I think definitely worth a little value to the spread. So I'd keep an eye on that out of the morning skate if I was really interested in betting on this game too. There's, I think that's the one thing with the Canes too. It just looked like the start of both games, they just didn't manage the puck very well. And we've seen some of these breakaways and the Islanders able to cause some problems for them.
Yeah.
And I felt like for a lot of game one, the Islanders had a pretty good balance of spending some time in their zone, but having everything sorted out pretty well. And then that kind of fell apart, maybe just because of the sheer
Yeah,
amount.
I mean, there was also, it was penalties. Like they took a bunch of penalties that just sucked the wind out of them. It was bad. Yeah, it's terrible. I don't
1 for
want,
5 on the power play, Carolina. 1 for 5, but that adds up in terms of you're just for
yeah.
Islanders, you're playing
And they
your
were like
killers
back to
after the
back,
game.
and they just killed off one, and then Varlamov took a penalty. And from that point on, it was just all Canes. The crazy part about that was that the Islanders were up 3-1 going into the intermission, and I was like, "There's no way they're going to get through this first 10 minutes without giving up at least one of these." And they did. They got through that first 10 minutes. And I was like, "Oh my God!" But then, when Jarvis scored and he scored with like 9 minutes left, I was like, "This is game is they were going to lose this game in regulation. It's not even go to overtime." And I was right, but in the weirdest possible way. And I was saying to Tim before we started recording that the sickest part about what happened was that the Hurricanes had their goalie pulled with 3 minutes left, and the thought about an Islanders empty net goal didn't even cross my mind. It wasn't even a possibility. it wasn't, because they weren't touching the puck. So it didn't even compute in my head like, oh, the Islanders can go ahead and win this game by scoring in the goal that doesn't have a goalie in it. But nope. Anyways, yeah, we had a terrible time Thursday night. So good luck to everybody for that one. Okay.
Hey, you show up the next day though. That,
Yeah.
not a lot of people do that. Show up the next day.
Real quick, I want to make a habit of doing this on these shows as we go into the playoffs. If you had to pick a bet that you like the most on the board, it can be one we've talked about, or prop side, total, whatever. What would it be? I already said I think the Knights for me at plus 135 or better against the Stars is my favorite. I just think that's way too wide on a team that is this good, and it looks like a must-win tax being baked in. Nick, if you had to pick one.
I'm gonna go with the Bruins Leafs overtime. I think that's a good bet. I love these overtime bets. I think they're so much fun. You have a good sweat if it's close at all, and I think we're gonna see that. So I like the Leafs Bruins overtime at plus 340.
I'm going to go with the Rupe Hintz over 1 point prop, minus 125. And I also thought about for a second, our guy, Adam Henrique, playing up on the top line for a point, plus 130. I thought about that, but I feel a little better about Hintz.
All right. So it's Hintz over 1 point, or to record a point. The Vegas Golden Knights money line for me, and Nick likes the overtime and Bruins and Leafs. Thank you for listening. We'll be back recording Thursday night after I get home from said Islander game. Maybe I'll be here, maybe I won't. But nonetheless, we'll be back then. So you can find us in the feed Friday morning to look ahead to the Friday night and weekend games.